Well, I think we got our answer on how the Bucks treat the trade deadline. Giannis goes down with an injury once again. What it means for the rest of this season and beyond. Coming up on today's Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into Locked On Bucks. My name is Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. You can hear me on the Bucks radio network each and every game. You can find Camille as part of our Locked On NBA coverage weekly and the Technical Foul podcast as well. Today's episode of Locked On Bucks is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. And we thank each and every one of you for helping make the Locked On Podcast Network now the #1 sports podcast network in the industry. So we go all the way back to, Camille, I can't remember when we played last with cancellations and everything else moving in. Friday, right? Friday. We go all the way back to Friday. And, we talked about this on Dave and I on the radio network.
Mm-hmm.
That, I don't, and I'm curious if this has stood out more so in other games to you, but it was apparent in this one. He didn't look like Giannis.
Yeah.
And I was talking with somebody else that we referenced quite a bit on this show in the media during the game, where he was like, did you notice this? And doesn't it seem like something happened here? And then Giannis comes back with the wrap on his right leg. And it just felt like, and we mentioned this exact wording a couple of times, like, man, it just, the explosiveness that you usually see from him, it's not there. Like, we can talk about the field goal attempts, fine, but part of it too is there'd be more if Giannis was playing a certain way. So you already had that starting to build. And then in the final minute of the game, it just boils over with Giannis suffering what, as of this moment, we don't know. We're going off what Giannis said Friday night. He thinks is another soleus strain, and it's going to be a 4 to 6 week absence. But I mean, there's no disputing he did not look like the guy that imposes his will and plays at a certain level throughout that game. I'm not saying that it's for any other reason other than I think it's pretty clear he has not been 100% for most of his time returning. But has that stuck out in more games other than what we saw Friday to you?
Not as much. Like the first few games when he was returning, like I was kind of like, okay, he looks like he's still trying
working
to
his
kind
way
of
back.
Yeah, like figure things out right now. Like I mentioned, like he wasn't really going after he wasn't jumping for the rebounds as much. Like he had a couple of dunks there where I was like, oh, well, maybe he is feeling all right. But in that game against Denver, the first thing I thought was like, man, he's not beating guys off the dribble right now.
Yeah.
Which is very un-Giannis, like where he gets that angle, he's to the rim, but he could not seem to get that burst there. So I was like, okay, that's kind of interesting. And that's a game that I actually watched on delay. So I had a friend text me like, why does Giannis only have 5 shot attempts in the third quarter?
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm still in quarter 1, but I'll let you know what I'm seeing.
I don't want to talk about it right now.
And I'm watching, I'm like, the explosiveness isn't there for him. And I'm like, that's the main reason I was like, he's not getting the shot attempts because he's not getting to his spots on the floor he's used to getting to, and he's kicking out. And he was also playmaking for his other teammates as well. And you know how that can go from time to time if shots aren't falling. But to your point, he just did not look good. And then in the fourth quarter, you saw him kind of pushing through where it was like, okay, he's getting to the free throw line. He's trying to impose his will on this game in a sense. But then a minute left to go, he's laboring the entire time. And then by the end, when he turns around to get back in transition off of jumping a couple times for a rebound that he didn't get, he takes off and you see him just kind of slow up. And I was like, he forced it. He's hurt. I was like, he's hurt right now. And to hear him after the game, when he self-diagnosed himself on how long he'll be out, the part to me that really stood out in his post-game presser about the injury and the situation was he was just asked like, hey, if the team was doing better, do you think that you would have, sat this one out a little bit earlier? And he just said yes. Like, this is a situation for Giannis where he sees where the Bucks are in the standing. He understands how important he is to the direction of this franchise, and he's trying with everything that he has right now to get out there and affect winning. But he's hurt. He's hurt right now. And if he's going to be out for 4 to 6 weeks, like at this point, now it's time to have the conversation around, is this time for the quiet shutdown of the season, the quiet tank, so to speak, for this Bucks team that does have a 2026 draft pick. I know there is some confusion around what assets the Bucks actually have, but the Bucks have a draft pick in this upcoming draft. It is just engaged in the pick swap. So the Pelicans and the Bucks, whichever of those draft picks ends up being worst is the one that the Bucks will get. Whichever one is better is the one that the Hawks will get, because the Pelicans traded the swap this past year during the draft to get Derek Queen. So the Bucks have a draft pick, and hearing the new latest from Giannis's mouth, not from the team itself, but it feels to me we're getting to a point where let's try to get a high draft pick since we actually have one.
The Hawks have no bearing on this.
Right.
In terms of their record, it's Bucks and Pelicans. The Bucks do have a pick. They don't control the pick, however. And at this point, with where New Orleans is suddenly winning back-to-back games, it figures. Obviously, the lottery factors into this, and the way things have gone this season on all fronts, it would be very, very on brand for the Bucks to win the lottery, and that goes to the Atlanta Hawks. But yes, it has, the Hawks' record has no impact on it. The Bucks will have a pick in this first round, and as of this moment, it's going to be a good pick, right? But yeah, to just, I suppose the good thing, if we can even classify it as such, from Friday. And I know I mentioned on our most recent show, like, we're going to do a post game. It was an 8:30 tip. Yep. After that, with the air being let out of the balloon and everything else, like, well, we're not recording Friday night at 1:30 by the time I get done with radio. And then you wake up Saturday and you're like, what is there to say? What's the motivation? So we may have promised, we didn't deliver it. That's the reason why. But look, if he is in fact out 4 to 6 weeks, and we have no reason to believe that's not the case when you look at how he looked, what we've seen in previous issues with calves and soleus strains, and just the sheer fact too of this has been 3 seasons that this has lingered and carried over into, obviously you go back to the first year with Dame where it shut down his season, and it's suddenly shifted from the knee and constantly worrying about knee soreness and monitoring that to, we got to keep an eye on Giannis's calf here because it just seems to not be fully healed and keeps bubbling up at the most inopportune moments. The reality is, it is probably best for everyone at this point to just say, shut it down. Like, if you want to play this season, fine. 6 weeks is what we're looking at. We'll slowly bring you back once in a while, but there's no need for you to play, 6 weeks from now, the majority of the games. Like, we'll pick our spots, we'll build in rest, but like, the bigger concern now is the future of your calf and just getting that thing to 100%, whether it's, for us next season or whatever happens. That's the big thing for Giannis and for the Bucks, knowing that and constantly, well, if they do this and if they do this, well, that ship has now sailed. It's not to say they can't win without Giannis. I mean, we have a pretty large sample size that shows that's been rather difficult. So it's not like a defeatist mentality. It's more of this gives us a chance to do something we haven't done for a decade, basically. And that's what this organization needs more than anything. So some more thoughts on that and the motivations that this team now has at the trade deadline, how they will approach things going forward, knowing full well it's going to be another extended absence for Giannis. We'll get into that discussion coming up after this. It's the last call for football on FanDuel. One final Sunday, one last kickoff, the final chance to get in on the action before the NFL season officially comes to a close. This is Super Bowl 60 FanDuel is making sure you're right in the middle of it with a special offer just in time for the biggest game of the year. Whether you're backing the favorite, riding with the underdog, or building one last same-game parlay, this is the game everyone's been waiting for. This is where predictions turn into plays, stats turn into storylines, and every snap feels bigger. It's the perfect way to cap off the season and make the Super Bowl even more exciting from kickoff to the final whistle. If you're a new customer, bet just $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. Make it count, because after the Super Bowl, the season's over. Last call for football on FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of Super Bowl 60. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, so 4 to 6 weeks in the mind of Giannis. That's going to take you to early March at worst case scenario. Best case scenario is it's mid to late February, which is past the trade deadline.
Right.
This is not to say that, well, a team's not going to trade for not just Giannis, like Ja Morant and the other names that Anthony Davis that have dealt with injuries too. It doesn't totally shut the door on it. Like, you just need to pass the physical. And I forget who it was. It may have been Jeff Stotts that talked about what needs to be done there in the short term. We'll pass the physical. We know he's not going to play right now, but long term, we don't have any issues with what we're seeing. So, like, in that sense, it's not, well, he's not traded now. I still don't and never thought he was going to be traded during the season. So in that sense, nothing changes there. What does change for the Bucks is knowing you can't sell, all right, let's figure this out and, figure out what works around Giannis, continue to improve the bench. Maybe we make a big swing. I would assume that's put on pause. Maybe we even tinker and add, like, can we find a role player? And similar to last year when what you did to bring in Jericho Sims and Kevin Porter Jr., those were small moves. And even anything like that, I think it's on pause, where it's just, I'm not going to say you're tanking and you're quitting, but you're injured, right? We still didn't know if AJ Green was going to play yesterday, if that were the case. Not just Giannis. Kevin Porter Jr., it sounds like, is going to be out for a significant amount of time, in the words of Doc Rivers. So it just kind of pushes all these things into the center of the table where we said, you're going to get your answer. I think you got your answer at 10:30 Friday night.
I would agree with that. And that's the thing for me, where it was like the quiet tank, where it's like the intention for this season was not that. The intention for this season for the Bucks was to come in and compete in the Eastern Conference. And leading up to this trade deadline, a lot of the conversation around what the Bucks might do, hey, this could be on the table, but they might trade for so-and-so. It was one of those things where it was like, I can understand why the Bucks might do one of those big moves, because when you look at the Eastern Conference standings, you're like, yes, we are 11th, but if we have 2 good weeks, we can be right back into the picture and get ourselves ready for the playoff run. But ultimately, Kevin Porter Jr. injury, the Giannis injury, honestly, and those are our 2 most important players on this team, with the way that they're able to initiate the offense, use their ability to touch paint, drive, kick, create for themselves or create for others, and not having the ball handling with Giannis, and then also without Kevin Porter Jr. It's just tough sledding for how this team is constructed. So for me, I was worried before the latest Giannis injury. I was worried that the Bucks might do something desperate and just use all
reword it for you.
Where it was like, oh, don't do this now for this one season. Like, the move has to be a bigger picture where it can work for this season and years to come if need be. So the injuries kind of make me think like, well, I think now the likelihood of the Bucks doing something that would strike me as being desperate for this season decreased drastically, because without Giannis in the picture, the team isn't going to go anywhere. Like, that's just the reality of how this team was constructed. We said it in the offseason. We saw it when we were seeing them play, the stretches without Giannis. If they have Giannis, there is really not much of a chance for them to move on in the playoffs and do anything there. So in a year where you actually do have your draft pick, in a year where the 2026 draft is shaping up to be one of those ones coming off the heels of a 25 draft class where you see rookies coming in and making an impact immediately on various teams. You see it in Philly. You see it with Cooper Flagg in Dallas. You see it even Con Knipple in Charlotte.
Cedric Howard, right? I mean, it's
so
not just Yeah, I mean it's that's the thing. It's not just like, oh well, Cooper Flagg's the number one pick or this guy was the
Exactly.
number 4 pick. Like we're seeing it more and more that it's you can now get immediate impact guys, not like superstar necessarily even, but just this team needs a rotational piece and an impact, a
Yeah.
playable guy at any point that's young in the draft, which they're void of for a decade. And we're seeing more and more. You can get that everywhere in the draft. First round, outside of the lottery, second round.
Yeah, I mean, even Colin Murray Boyles, like there are so many guys this season where it's been like, man, they are making an impact already. And this 2026 draft class is being pegged as even better than what we saw last year. Like we just had 3 freshmen score 40 points on the same day. Like this is a class where it's like if you have a draft pick and for the Bucks, it's looking like it's going to be a lottery pick. This is a year to have one. So like it might be one of those things where basketball guys, the karma of it all works out. Like the Bucks had the right intentions going into this season. Injuries have shut it all down. Now let's pivot and see what we can get out this upcoming draft. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean that's the other thing. That is where I'm at as well. They need an injection of youth. Not only to have young talent, like crazy thing is for all the work that they did in the offseason to get younger. And we spent time talking about like, well, for all intents and purposes, Giannis is the oldest player on the team. I know like literally we know Gary Harris was going to be as important as he has been so far, but they've gotten younger and they're still the 5th oldest team in the league. So it shows you where they stack up here. Just looking at it year by year, last year they did not have a first round pick. Second round pick was Bogalub Markovic, who maybe he develops into a rotational piece in a year or two. We'll see, right? But who knows? 2024, which is the draft that's going. You know what? I shouldn't even say that because we've had a number of these, but it is a draft that is going to, I think, haunt the Bucks. AJ Johnson was your first round pick. Like at the time, you and Frank handled the instant reaction to it. When we started to see AJ Johnson's name, you're like, this isn't the first rounder, right? Like they're interested in the second round. AJ Johnson, by all accounts, would not have been a first round pick anywhere else. He was graded as a second round talent. You heard nobody sniffing around there. We have since seen, I always confuse the two. It's Keyshawn, right? Not Keontae. Keyshawn George saying, yeah, the Bucks made a promise that they were going to draft me if I was there. He was there. They didn't take him. And for all the talk of a bigger wing and what you need at small forward, he'd look pretty good right now and fill some needs in a Bucks uniform. Tyler Smith, your second round pick. 1 year later, right? Neither of those two guys are on your team. And in the case of AJ Johnson, despite everybody telling us how much the Bucks were going to rue the day they sent him away, he can't even sniff the rotation for a young going nowhere Washington Wizards team. Tyler Smith, back on a 2-way deal, but hasn't shown any of those signs. 2023, I'm going to be as impartial as I can here, but my boy Chris Livingston is your only pick that season and final pick there, number 58. Again, maybe there was eventually something there. That one, that's your only pick. It's tougher to be harsh on, but 2022 first round pick, 24th overall, Marjan Beauchamp. 2020, RJ Hampton, part of a trade with the Denver Nuggets. Jordan Nwora was your second round pick. 2019, Kevin Porter Jr. comes full circle. That was the John Lure trade and Tony Snell payoff, I think, where that was the Bucks to Detroit to Cleveland eventually. 2018, Dante DiVincenzo. I mean, you got to go back 7 years to say there's a guy that had a role that stuck with this team and that continues to have a role in the NBA. Dante DiVincenzo at number 17 in 2018. DJ Wilson the year prior to that. Thon Maker at number 10 the year prior to that. Malcolm Brogdon in the second round in 2016. 2015 first round Rashad Vaughn. 2015 second round pick Norman Powell, who was part of that trade with Grievous, the Raptors, where you got Grievous Vasquez. So you just look at every single year. I mean, and if you want to be this harsh too, 2014, Jabari Parker at least lasted for a couple of seasons and one contract with you in the NBA, but Jabari Parker in front of Joel Embiid was the draft pick. So if you go all the way back to Giannis in 2013, and you look at every single guy that was drafted, which is 17, I believe. Oh, no. 21 players that the Bucks have drafted since taking Giannis. Their name has been attached to as some of those parts of trades. But 21 guys. The most impactful players in that process have been Norman Powell, who you never retained, Malcolm Brogdon, who you, I think, made the right decision when you had to pick between players, but the way you managed it and to not get a trade exception in that deal was certainly notable. Dante DiVincenzo, who had a role, who was, I think, a guy that you could continue to see building. I'm not going to say Dante DiVincenzo now, the finished product, is who he was in Milwaukee, but he was clearly well on the path to that. And you traded for Serge Ibaka. That's it. Like, those are the guys that have stood out since 2014 draft. That right there is the problem with this team.
Yep. And it can't continue to be a problem for this team. We've talked about how the new CBA is putting an emphasis on hitting on those draft picks, on hitting on two-way guys, on finding young talent in the league that you can continue to have on these cheaper deals as you build around and then see what they can become thereafter. And especially in a small market like Milwaukee, like, I understand that market size isn't as big of a conversation as it was even 20 years ago because of, internet, social media and whatnot to make the game feel more global, where you can check in on anybody anywhere. Like, Giannis is a global superstar coming to you from Milwaukee, Wisconsin right now. But like, free agency, a lot of guys aren't checking for Milwaukee unless you have a Giannis. Like, unless you have the star, you're not really checking for the Milwaukee Bucks. So it's really important to hit on these draft picks. And given where this franchise is now, with your superstar 30, 31 years old, there's a lot of smoke around what his future might be. Like, you have to start hitting on these draft picks. Like, it cannot continue to be a list like the one you just read. Like, they have to do better. And my hope is that if the Bucks are in the lottery this year, which all signs are pointing that's where they're heading towards, given the crop of talent, they pick the right guy in that top 14 that can actually help the team going forward. Because I can already hear people saying, like, yeah, the draft pick is cool, but do you have the trust in this front office to make the right pick? And honestly, that's a fair gripe to have.
All right, one other sobering thing on the draft itself and those numbers that we just rattled off. And then what happens for the rest of the week? What happens with yesterday's game? All of it. So we'll get to that coming up after this on Locked On Bucks. It's nothing like being in an NBA arena. The crowd, the energy, the moment, getting things picking up there down the stretch. Go back to Friday night, and granted, the result isn't what we were looking for, but that's what you want to be there for, that final push by the Bucks or any team. That's the atmosphere you get in the arena. Getting your tickets, though, that's tough. It has to be much more simple. And that's why Game Time has become the go-to app for scoring tickets fast. Without the hassle, it puts the advantage back where it belongs, with the fans. You pull up the Game Time app, pick an upcoming NBA game, and tickets are loaded within minutes. You see all the prices up front, so there's no surprise fees at checkout. You're even able to see a view from your seat before you purchase those tickets. And you got zone deals where you choose the section, game picks the seats, and you save. Great last-minute options, too, with NBA tickets showing up at solid prices. Everything feels quick, intuitive, and stress-free from start to finish. So take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. That is Locked On NBA for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today, and remember, it's GameTime.co, not GameTime.com. Locked On to get $20 off at GameTime.co. And the NBA trade deadline, it's basically here. Next week already, we want to give you a free month of our new Everydayer Club to help you get ready for the NBA trade deadline. If you need a group chat to keep up with the chaos, then join ours. Everydayer Club gets you access to a group chat on Discord just for Bucks fans, plus national chats where you can hang out with fans from across the league. You get ad-free versions of this show, and if you sign up by the trade deadline on February 5th, you can use the code DEADLINE and get your first month free. Tap the link in the show notes to learn more and become a part of the Everydayer Club. You've heard Camille and I reference some of the discussions taking place on the Discord there. We're still working on some unique experiences for those of you that are a part of the Everydayer Club to get you even more access there as well. So yesterday's
really quick with the Everydayer Club, because other teams can kind of pop in a different channel. So like before this Mavericks game, we had a Mavericks fan in the Locked On Bucks group chat over there on the Discord. And the conversation was really funny. He also was trying to see if we wanted Anthony Davis. And I was like, please leave. You can go back to the Locked On Mass Discord. Please leave.
So speaking of the Mavericks, another postponed game for this team.
Yeah.
I mean, this was basically the inverse of the Heat game last year. There's someone talking to me like, oh, this is just like the Pelicans. Like, no, the Bucks arrived in New Orleans, I think 2 days before the snowstorm as they were trying to beat it. And the city shut down with the snow that New Orleans had. So that was the reason for the cancellation. But then remember, they flew back for, I think it was a Thursday game in Miami or in Milwaukee against Miami. And they didn't, it was supposed to be a 6 o'clock tip, I believe, or 6:30, and they pushed it back to 7:30. The Bucks didn't arrive in Milwaukee until like 3:30-ish because they couldn't get clearance to land. So like they pushed it up to the very last minute to get this one in. The difference being, Dallas doesn't live in Milwaukee. Like the Bucks were coming back, and I believe they had a homestand after that. So they were just like, screw it. We're going to be here anyway. Let's get this thing over with and not worry about rescheduling it. The Mavs go back to Dallas and don't play again until Wednesday. What I had heard, so like, first of all, just the timeline of the day, you saw the snowstorms and everything else taking place all throughout the country. Yeah. And we're like, oh, okay. Then we see the Grizzlies game postponed with the Nuggets. And that wasn't until like 90 minutes before the game was supposed to tip that they formally postponed that game. But that was a 2:30 tip. And you were looking around like, is Dallas here? Like, is this going to be an issue for our game? So talking with some people that are in the travel party for the Mavericks, we were in communication with them throughout the early afternoon, and it was like, nope, we haven't left yet. At first, they were supposed to leave at 11:30, arrive in Milwaukee at around 1:30. And as of 12:30, it was still on the tarmac. As of 1 o'clock, still on the tarmac. And that's where you're thinking, like, there's no way they're playing this game.
Right.
Dallas is not going to leave, get into Milwaukee at 3 o'clock, 3:30, then have to drive to the arena, play at 6. There's no way this happens. So, like, what are we waiting for? And started to hear the two teams are in discussions of like, well, we'd rather play here, and coming to an agreement. I heard they did come to an agreement on the date. So the Bucks the league formally postponed the game and just said the actual makeup date will be announced at a later time. I heard the two teams agreed to it. The league just needs to approve it. All I will say is I don't know if the Bucks post All-Star break schedule is actually going to start on February 20th. It may be sooner than that because of this. But my one gripe with all of it, and there was a few fans that reached out to me on social media, some friends of mine that were coming from not Milwaukee, around the area to go to that game, because this was the AJ Green bucket hat game.
I wanted that hat. I was trying to tell the fan, like, listen, if y'all get an extra hat, hit me up.
Look, I know there's a lot of moving parts here. We knew where this was headed. Mm-hmm. Anybody that was cognizant of the Mavericks travel situation, what the weather was, you knew where this was headed. to wait as long as we got to postpone it, and especially in Memphis, right? To 90 minutes before the game is played is when it's postponed. The players and the team and the travel that they have accommodated for them, it's an annoyance. It's one thing, right? But for fans to travel to it, for arena staff that is not making nearly as much as players, like I was talking with people that were already in the arena that got there at their usual time, whereas I had the benefit to say, I'm 99% sure this game isn't playing, so I'm in no rush to get to the arena. I guess I'll scramble if I have to, but you had people that were already there, and once they got there, knew this isn't happening. I'm not going to be paid for the day. I already come in here and go through all this. That's my one gripe with the league of, come on. Let's just expedite this and take care of this in a timely manner, especially there was one guy, and I forget who it was, who was talking to me, who was coming into the game and planning to from Green Bay. Like, should I leave? Like, yeah. I can't tell you too much, really, but I would just tell you, wait. But he's not alone. You have other fans who are like, am I really going to leave and drive there and be, 30 minutes into my commute and see games postponed and have to turn around?
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part. And even with the announcements, like, it was announced that the game was going to be postponed by channels other than the official, like, Milwaukee Bucks channel prior to the Bucks even announcing it.
Yeah.
And it was kind of just strange of like, why are we waiting so long to say this? And I mean,
and at the very least, put out it's a fluid situation. Mm-hmm. There's no formal announcement yet, but stand by. Something like that.
So people can know. Like, the only good thing that came out of the delay and them doing it taking so long was the fact, as you mentioned, there were already people in the arena prepping for the game. All the food that was being prepped went to local area shelters. That was the one thing where I was like, okay, well, at least there was something positive to come out of this situation where people had to themselves get out in the cold, drive through the snow, get to the arena, start working for a game that wasn't going to take place. So at least those people who had to come into the arena and start their work and all the prep, they were able to be part of something bigger and help out some other people along the way. So like, that was the only thing that I took away from it being like, hey, that kind of was a positive because they were able to help some people out. But yeah, the whole situation leading up to it, and it was just convoluted. Like, there could have been something said a lot earlier, and not just in Milwaukee, to your point, even in Memphis, 90 minutes ahead of a game. Like,
that was ridiculous.
By that point, you're already down by the arena, getting your pregame meal in, doing what you do before the game, and go back home now. And Memphis too, braving the ice and all the stuff that they had down there. Like, that's a tough situation for the league and not a good look for it.
Yeah, so it will be made up again. I would just keep an eye on the post All-Star break start. If you're wondering, when is this game going to be played? If you're planning to sync your vacation to the Bucks All-Star break, maybe stand by on that. So now they start a 3-game road trip in Philly, which we're really doing this where we're playing a 7 p.m. tip Central Time in Philly, an 8 o'clock tip tomorrow night. But you got Philly, then you got the Wizards, and then the Boston Celtics in an afternoon Sunday game. But I mean, the scope of this we talked about the deadline of this road trip. It's changed with the news that came on Friday, where it's not just like, well, these teams have been tough, and can you steal this one and this one and this one? Externally, that urgency is gone. It's not to say it is internally, but externally, there's no longer the weight of the world on this team.
Nope. And I've said it before, like, when teams get to this point where fans or whoever is looking on the outside looking in, they're going like, hey, that team is tanking. Like, you can't expect much from them. I always say this, like, generally the players ain't in on that. Like, the players are going to come out there and still play as hard as they possibly can because they understand not only are they playing for this season, they're playing for their career and whoever else might be looking around the league. So they're going to come with it. And this is a Bucks team that we've seen a few times where it felt like, are they giving up in this game? Some games over the last few weeks have felt like they have gotten beat down early and then they cannot get it back. And it's like, well, now they're going through the motions here. I'll be very curious to see just the energy of the group, because again, I'm sure they can understand the situation knowing Giannis about to be out, trade deadlines coming, it's a lot of things happening, and they're not where they want to be. How do the guys on the court respond to this? Because the question is going to be like, well, if you're continuing to build around Giannis, which of these guys continue to stay? Because prior to the injury, I was thinking this could be one of those trade deadlines where a lot of guys are sent out. Like I mentioned, some might have been desperation moves. Others might have been like, we just know this isn't going to work, so we need to pivot here. So guys are going to have opportunity to get some real playing time that might not have been before. What does that look like? Can anyone show and surprise and be like, hey, actually, we want them to remain in Milwaukee going forward? So I'll be curious to see what the energy is like for the guys on the floor. And also, I'm now thinking with this injury, there's a lot of conversation around Doc Rivers as well and his job. And I've said it myself, the way that the team has been performing, he hasn't been good enough at his job. I'm very curious now with the injury, do the Bucks just continue to ride out the season with Doc? Because at this point, it's like, is there a benefit to getting a new coach if you don't feel like you're going to make a move in the playoffs this year? You know what I mean? Like, do you just not just ride this year out, figure it out in the offseason, and then move forward from there? So that's another area for me where I'm kind of keeping an eye on, because before I was thinking like, man, this team's underperforming. The coach hasn't been good enough. Is there going to be a change here? I'm starting to feel like there's not going to be that coaching change with where this team currently is right now as well.
And for the record, it is Camille Davis, not me, paid member of the Bucks, that is questioning the effort of this team and saying that Doc Rivers needs to be fired. Lastly, too, Bobby Marks is starting to do his trade deadline primers, and within the recording of the show, he released his on the Bucks. I believe he has his video out there as well, but they have 17 players, including two-way guys under contract. 11 of them are free agents this offseason, or potentially free agents with player options. KPJ, Gary Trent Jr., Gary Harris, Taurean Prince, and Jericho Sims all have player options this offseason. So, I mean, and his stance, too, is just be conservative because of the injury. Because of that it could be another offseason full of a ton of changes with the way that the contracts are structured. But his did you know notes that he includes, did you know Giannis Antetokounmpo is the only player on the roster selected by the Bucks in the first round? I would venture to guess 99.9% of Bucks fans and 100% of people listening and viewing this show already knew that. You don't have to remind us, Bobby. So, yes, tomorrow night in Philly for the Bucks and the Sixers. The latest injury report that was rendered moot was Giannis obviously out, Kevin Porter Jr. out, AJ Green was questionable. So we'll see what the updates are on the injury report later today and eventually tomorrow for that matchup. The Bucks are supposed to practice and hold a shoot around and media availability today, early afternoon, as we're recording this in the late morning. I believe 11:30-ish is when media is welcome to show up. So we'll see if we get any updates on the timeline of Giannis sometime around 11:30 or noon later on today. That'll do it for today's show, though. Thanks again to everyone for tuning into this show, making it your first listen to the day each and every day. Make sure, if you have not already, you subscribe and follow so you get all the latest episodes, especially over the course of these next 10 days. As we move into the trade deadline, you get notified when we go live. If you never miss an episode, the Everydayer Club is built for you. You get Locked On Bucks ad-free, plus members-only Discord access and more. Find the link to sign up for the Everydayer Club in the show notes of today's episode. For those of you on video, we send you to the first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make that your second listen. NBA Game Nights on Locked On NBA. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.